Everyone has their own way of acquiring and retaining information. This is your learning style, and it is your innate ability to memorize information based on the way your brain works, combined with your experiences and habits. So, your learning style is not based on age, gender, intelligence, or any other such factors. And the good news is that there are no right or wrong learning style. Your learning style is entirely based on what works best for you, and learning styles differ from person to person. Some people learn most effectively by sharing, discussing, and presenting information, or through group work and collaboration. Other people prefer to work alone and learn best by quietly reading through the information and taking notes. There are also people who like to listen to music while they study. There is nothing wrong with any of these learning styles as long as they work. And in order to determine what works for you, you first need to understand the three basic learning styles. They are visual learning, auditory learning, and kinesthetic learning. So people who easily remember what they hear and enjoy learning by working in groups or attending seminars and presentations are usually auditory learners. So auditory learners can easily recall conversations, podcasts, or information that they have heard, and learning takes place through listening. They also learn by presenting their work to others. While auditory learners are good at remembering what they hear, they are not always good at remembering what they see or at visualizing an experience to trigger a memory. For auditory learners, it is easier to remember names than faces, and they are better at remembering directions that they have been given rather than maps that they have seen. Auditory learners often like to read the work out loud, record it, and then listen to it again because reading also helps encode the information and listening to it again reinforce the encoding process. So looking at the language you use can also help you identify your learning style. Auditory learners will use expressions like, how does that idea sound to you? Or I've heard this is the best way to do it. But visual learners remember what they see and are able to easily recall information that is presented in a visual format like a diagram, graph, mind map, or chart. Encoding takes place through visual stimulation, and visual learners prefer face-to-face discussion rather than speaking on the telephone because body language and facial expressions are important to them, because they add context to the information. Visual learners will often choose to sit in the front of the classroom. They like to take notes and draw colorful mind maps. But visual learners remember information by placing it in context. And when they retrieve information, they often visualize when and where they received the information. They have a good memory for faces, but often forget names, and they are usually not good listeners and become easily distracted during conversations. But visual learners use visual language and will often say things like, I see what you mean, or how does this idea look to you? Or can you picture it? Can you imagine it? The last group of learners are kinesthetic learners, and they learn by doing and moving. So kinesthetic learners retain information best if they are physically part of the learning process and they don't like to sit still at a desk studying or reading for too long. So kinesthetic learners prefer to do experiments rather than read about them, and they learn more through participation than listening or observing. They generally can't sit still for too long, and they are eager to get started with the work even while the teacher is still explaining what needs to be done. But kinesthetic learners don't want to visualize or listen to long explanations. They want to do and can easily repeat a task or experiment that they have done in the past. They might not be good at following directions or reading maps, but once they have been somewhere, they can easily find their way back there again. So kinesthetic learners often use phrases like let's get things started or we need to get moving on this project. So it is important to identify your learning style as this will influence the learning strategies that you use and the ways in which you can improve the quality of your learning. If you look at these different groups, you will see that you might not fit into one group exclusively, but that you identify with more than one group than the others, and this will be your dominant learning style. So depending on your learning style, certain strategies will work better for you than others. An auditory learner does not want to sit alone in a quiet room reading textbook, while a visual learner doesn't want to be distracted by group work and discussions, and a kinesthetic learner doesn't want to be lectured. They do want to experiment. So it is important, however, not to confuse learning styles with learning strategies. Your learning style is an innate ability to learn and memorize information, and learning strategies are the techniques and methods that you develop in order to improve the speed and quality of your learning.